Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said no intimacy until we fixed our issues. She said it calmly, like it was a project plan, not a marriage. I nodded, because I know how silence works. I build systems that survive it. That morning I sat alone in my car, the quiet one that barely makes a sound when it pulls away from the curb, and watched the house through the windshield. The porch light was still on. She hadn't slept. Or maybe she had, just not next to me. I drove to Dunkin' out of habit, ordered the same coffee I always do, and drank it without tasting anything. Control is muscle memory. You use it when you need it most. My name is Ethan Cole, 41, cybersecurity architect. I spend my days closing doors people forget they left open. At home, I'd been doing the opposite, letting things drift, letting silence pretend it was peace. She worked in marketing, lived inside notifications, metrics, engagement. She believed attention was oxygen. When she said distance would help us reset, she meant she wanted me to feel the absence. What she didn't say was that she'd already filled the space. I noticed it that night, sitting on opposite ends of the couch with Hulu playing something neither of us was watching. Her phone lit up, face down, again and again. Not the soft buzz of group chats or work pings. This was different. Immediate. Personal. The kind of rhythm you don't need to see to recognize. I didn't ask. Asking gives people time to lie. I went to bed early. Not angry. Focused. The house sounded different when I moved through it alone. Servers hum. So does guilt, if you know how to listen. The next day, she smiled more than she had in weeks. Lighter. Like someone had remembered an old version of her and handed it back. She took photos of random things, typed fast, laughed quietly at nothing I could hear. The past has a way of knocking without permission. I didn't confront her. I opened a new notebook and wrote one line. Silence doesn't fix what it breaks. Systems do. That evening, as I pulled into the driveway, I realized something else. She thought distance was leverage. She thought intimacy was a switch she could flip off and on. What she didn't understand was that I'd already started moving. Not away from her. Around her. And once I start closing access, I don't reopen it just because someone remembers my password. The second night after she set the rules, I took the long way home. I let the Tesla Model 3 glide through side streets. No radio, no calls, just the low electric hum that sounds like a held breath. Quiet helps me think. It always has. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I wasn't wondering if something was happening. I was wondering how long it had been happening without me noticing. Inside, the house felt staged. Lights set just right. Throw pillows aligned. She was on the couch again, Hulu playing something nostalgic, one of those shows we used to binge back when silence felt like comfort instead of avoidance. She smiled when I walked in. Not guilty. Relieved. Like she'd already had the conversation she needed today, just not with me. I sat down, left space between us. Distance was her idea. I was just respecting the architecture. Her phone stayed in her hand. Not hidden. Presented. She wanted me to see she wasn't hiding anything. That's always the tell. People who aren't hiding things don't manage visibility. I work with systems that log everything. Not content, just behavior. Timestamps. Frequency. Escalation curves. You don't need to read messages to know when a channel has shifted from casual to critical. I watched her thumbs. Faster than work. Slower than panic. Familiar. Later that night, when she went to shower, her phone stayed behind. Face down. Charging. She trusted me not to touch it. That trust was earned. Also outdated. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. I glanced at the lock screen when it lit up. No names. Just a preview line. Cut short, ending with a laughing reaction. The kind people use when they're re-entering an old rhythm. When inside jokes still work. I went to my office instead. Powered up my own screen. Checked nothing related to her accounts. That would have been sloppy. Emotional. Instead, I mapped behavior. New Wi-Fi devices. Increased background data usage. Late-night uploads. Patterns don't lie. They just wait. She came to bed hours later. Stayed on her side. No touch. No apology. She whispered that therapy would help. That space was healthy. I listened without responding. Silence is only dangerous when you don't know how to weaponize it. Before sleep, I wrote another line under yesterday's note. Past connections don't reactivate by accident. Someone always opens the door. And this time, it wasn't me. By the end of the week, The house had settled into a routine that felt engineered. We moved around each other like co-workers on different shifts. Polite, efficient, empty. She said space was helping. I let her believe it. Pressure works best when the other side thinks it's in control. Every morning, I left before she woke up. The car rolled out silently, and I'd stop for coffee without thinking about it. Duncan was never about caffeine. It was about sitting alone, watching people scroll through their phones, rehearsing versions of themselves for someone else. That's where patterns make sense. Nobody hides in public anymore. They perform. She stopped asking where I was going. That told me everything. Curiosity dies when attention is redirected. At home, she started cleaning things she never touched before. Closets, old boxes. A stack of clothes quietly disappeared. One evening I noticed listings open on her laptop. Photos taken fast. Neutral descriptions. Prices set just low enough to move quickly. Facebook Marketplace has a tone to it. Detached. Practical. It's how people sell pieces of a life they've already emotionally exited. She said she was decluttering. I didn't react. Decluttering is what people do when they're making room. What she didn't know was that I'd stopped syncing. Family cloud services stayed active on the surface, but I'd already begun separating dependencies. Backups. Credentials. Quiet changes that don't break anything immediately. They just prepare for isolation. You don't pull a plug without making sure your own systems stay online. One night, she suggested we eat separately. Said she grabbed Subway on the way home because she'd been busy. I nodded, stayed in my office, and listened to the wrapper crinkle in the kitchen. Fast food has a sound to it. Final. No plates. No shared space. Just consumption and disposal. Later, she posted a photo I recognized instantly. Same angle. Same lighting style I'd seen years ago in an old album. Not tagged. No comments from friends. Just one reaction from someone who knew exactly what it meant. Nostalgia is a language. And she was fluent again. I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. That night, I checked my notes and added a final sentence under the others. When someone prepares to meet the past, they first erase the present. She thought she was buying time. What she was really doing was announcing intent. And intent is actionable. The shift happened quietly, the way real decisions always do. Not with a confession, not with a fight, but with logistics. Her calendar changed tone. Less work noise. More white space. Gaps that didn't belong to meetings or errands. Empty blocks are invitations. She said therapy would start next week. She said we were making progress. I watched her type that sentence with care, then close the app and immediately open another. 2 worlds. No crossover. I didn't ask where she was going on Saturday. I didn't need to. When someone starts curating outfits again after weeks of emotional hibernation, the destination isn't hard to guess. She stood in front of the mirror longer. Took photos she didn't save. Deleted them anyway. That behavior belongs to a first meeting, not a marriage. I went to Best Buy that afternoon. Bought a new laptop and a new phone. Paid cash. Declined data transfer. Clean hardware is a statement. It says whatever comes next will not inherit the past by accident. The guy at the counter tried to upsell me on protection plans. I smiled, nodded, and said I handled my own security. At home, I set everything up methodically. New credentials. New keys. I didn't shut anything down yet. That would have been loud. Instead, I built parallel systems. Personal cloud, isolated. Work credentials moved. Shared folders duplicated, then quietly deprecated. When the cut came, it would feel sudden to her. To me, it would feel overdue. She watched me from the kitchen that night, chewing on a Subway sandwich, wrapper folded neatly beside her. She said she was proud of how calm we were being. I didn't respond. Calm is not the same as connected. Calm is what happens when one person stops engaging. Later, she went out for a walk. Took longer than usual. Came back lighter. Energized. The past does that. It flatters without demanding change. She went to bed early. Phone face down. I stayed up, finishing migrations. When I powered down my old device for the last time, there was relief. Like locking a door you should have locked years ago. Before sleep, I wrote one more line in the notebook. Access isn't revoked in anger. It's removed when trust expires. She thought Saturday would be a reconnection. I knew it would be the beginning of an absence she wouldn't know how to fill. Saturday arrived without tension. That was the strange part. No arguments. No rehearsed speeches. Just quiet movement. like two people who'd already agreed the outcome but hadn't said it out loud. She moved through the house with purpose, dressed too carefully for someone claiming she needed space, not attention. I stayed neutral. Read the news. Cleaned a mug that was already clean. When she left, she didn't say where she was going. She didn't need to. The absence of explanation was explanation enough. The car slipped out of the driveway without sound. I watched the reflection fade from the window, then stood there for a full minute, letting the house reset. Silence has weight. Once you notice it, you can use it. I didn't follow her. That's amateur behavior. I did what I do best. I logged in. Shared calendars went first. Not deleted. Detached. Access downgraded so nothing broke immediately. Family photo streams followed. Archived. The kind of change you only notice when you reach for something familiar and it's suddenly gone. She thought she was stepping back into a memory. I was stepping forward into control. Midday, I took a break and ate alone. Subway again. The same place she'd been stopping lately. Funny how habits transfer. I watched people scroll through their phones, smiling at someone not in front of them. Everyone was somewhere else. Everyone thought they were invisible. Back home, I turned on Hulu out of reflex. The same show we'd been half watching for weeks played in the background. Characters talking past each other, filling space with sound so no one had to say anything real. I let it run while I finished reconfiguring permissions. Digital keys don't make noise when they stop working. They just stop opening doors. She came back later than expected. Quiet. Focused. Avoided my eyes but hummed softly, like she'd just come from somewhere warm. The past always feels warm when it asks for nothing. She went straight to the shower. Phone locked. Screen dark. I didn't touch it. I didn't need proof. Proof is for people who still plan to argue. When she finally came out, she said the walk helped her think. Said she felt clearer. Said maybe intimacy would come back once we were aligned. I nodded, said nothing. Silence is more unsettling when it doesn't resist. That night, while she slept easily for the first time in weeks, I finalized the last step. Communication rerouted. Notifications silenced. Shared threads left quietly. By morning, she would wake up feeling lighter. She just wouldn't know yet what she'd lost access to. Sunday morning exposed the difference between absence and removal. She woke up earlier than me, or maybe she didn't sleep at all. I heard her moving through the kitchen, opening apps before opening cabinets. That's how I knew it had started. The silence she designed was no longer directional. It wasn't aimed at me anymore. It was closing in around her. I stayed in bed, listening. She tapped her phone harder than usual. Once. Twice. Paused. Tapped again. People don't notice systems until they stop responding. When I finally walked into the kitchen, she was standing by the counter, phone in hand, staring at it like it had betrayed her. She looked up too quickly, forced a smile, said something about her cloud acting weird. I nodded, poured coffee, said nothing. Silence only works when it's uneven. She tried again later. Different app. Same result. Shared photos missing. Threads closed. History still there, but no future updates. Like a conversation someone had quietly walked away from mid-sentence. I went about my day like nothing had changed. Read. Cleaned up. Let Hulu run in the background again. The same muted show looping scenes of people stuck in problems they never actually solve. She sat on the other end of the couch, phone in her lap, refreshing screens that no longer refreshed her. Mid-afternoon, she opened her laptop. I recognized the posture immediately. Marketplace mode. Facebook Marketplace has a specific energy to it. Transactional. Detached. She listed more items. Lamps. A chair I liked. Pieces of us. Price to move. Selling always feels easier than explaining. She asked if I knew why some of our shared folders were gone. I shrugged. Said maybe there was an update. Maybe permissions changed. Technical language frustrates people who live emotionally. It sounds final even when it isn't. She didn't accuse me. That surprised her. Confusion needs a villain, and I wasn't offering myself. By evening, she was restless. Kept checking her phone. No notifications. No reactions. The person she'd been talking to was still there, still active, still saying all the right things. But something fundamental was missing. Me. Not emotionally. Structurally. That night, she tried to talk. Not about him. About us. About reconnecting. About how distance maybe wasn't working the way she expected. I listened. Then I went to bed. Because by the time people notice the silence has turned against them, the system is already closed. By Tuesday, she changed tactics. The silence stopped working on her, so she tried warmth. Nostalgia. I recognized the pattern immediately because I'd seen it before in breach responses. When access fails, users escalate privileges by pretending familiarity. My phone lit up while I was parked, engine off, sitting where I always sat before work. Same place, same routine. I watched the notification preview without opening it. The tone was wrong. Soft. Casual. Like it was 2018 again and nothing had ever hardened between us. She sent another one a few minutes later. Then another. No accusations. No mention of the weekend. Just check-ins. Shared memories. A photo from years ago she must have dug up. Smiling faces from before everything became transactional. I didn't reply. At the office, I stayed focused. Systems don't care about sentiment. They care about permissions. By lunchtime, I'd already rerouted a few more dependencies. Not to punish, to stabilize. When something is compromised, you isolate it until you understand the full scope. On the way home, I stopped for coffee out of habit. Dunkin' again. Same order. Same silence. I watched couples in line, phones in hand, together but elsewhere. That's how it starts. That's how it ends. When I walked into the house, she looked up like she'd been waiting. Phone in her hand. She asked if I'd seen her messages. Said she was just trying to reconnect. Said maybe she'd been wrong about distance. Said maybe silence had made things worse. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't validate. When she finished, I nodded once and went to my office. That was the moment it landed for her. Not anger. Not tears. The realization that I wasn't participating anymore. Later that night, she tried again. Longer messages. More explanation. She said she felt like she was losing me. That was the only accurate thing she'd said in weeks. I opened my laptop and drafted one response. Not emotional. Not defensive. Clean. Measured. I told her that for now, communication would be limited to practical matters. Schedules. Bills. Logistics. Anything else could go through counsel if needed. I sent it, then archived the thread. From her perspective, it must have felt abrupt. Like a door closing without warning. From mine, it was overdue maintenance. She chose silence as leverage. I chose silence as structure. And structures don't bend just because someone remembers how they used to feel. The confession didn't come as drama. It came as exhaustion. She sat across from me at the table, phone finally face up, untouched. No buzzing. No glow. That told me more than words ever could. People confess when the other channel stops responding the way they expected. She said she needed to be honest. Said she'd met someone from her past. Said it didn't start physical, at least not right away. Said she just needed to feel heard. Her voice didn't shake. It was almost rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in her head during the drive home from somewhere else. I didn't interrupt. I watched the way she avoided certain details, lingered on others. Emotional truth wrapped around logistical lies. That's common. People want credit for honesty without paying the full cost. She waited for something after she finished. Anger. Relief. Negotiation. What she got was stillness. I stood up, cleared my plate, and took it to the sink. The quiet rattled her more than yelling ever could. She followed me with her eyes, trying to calculate whether this was good or bad. That night, after she went to bed, I completed the final step. Shared services went dark. Not deleted. Ended. Streaming profiles disconnected. Family subscriptions closed. The shows we used to let run on Hulu disappeared from her watch history like they'd never existed. Memory lost by design. I packed my essentials slowly. Not everything. Just what mattered. Documents. Drives. Clothes she'd never noticed missing until later. When I left the house before dawn, I didn't wake her. There was no need. I stopped once on the way out of town for coffee, the same place I'd been going alone for weeks. Duncan was quiet that early. I sat there longer than usual, not thinking about her, but about the precision of it all. No confrontation. No scene. Just closure executed cleanly. By the time she woke up, the absence would be complete. No shared accounts. No shared digital space. Just a message waiting in her inbox, brief and procedural, outlining next steps and boundaries. She thought honesty would reopen a door. What it actually did was confirm that the system had already shut down for good. Distance feels different when it isn't chosen. She learned that within 48 hours. Not from me. From the quiet. Messages sent into nothing. Shared spaces that no longer existed. Services she assumed were background suddenly gone. like the power cut to a room she didn't realize I controlled. I stayed elsewhere, close enough to keep routines intact, far enough not to be pulled back into negotiations. Communication stayed exactly where I'd placed it. Sparse. Procedural. No openings. She tried to reframe it at first. Told herself I was cooling off. That I'd come back once emotions settled. People always think silence is temporary when they don't understand systems. The problem with reviving the past is that it rarely waits for the present to collapse cleanly. The man she'd been talking to didn't step into the gap the way she imagined. He stayed enthusiastic online, but real-time demands consistency, effort, stability. Nostalgia doesn't pay bills or show up when things get inconvenient. I didn't ask. I didn't check. You don't need surveillance when patterns repeat themselves. By midweek, her tone shifted again. Less playful, more urgent. She wrote like someone trying to regain access before the window closed completely. I didn't respond beyond logistics. Dates. Items to retrieve. Nothing emotional. She asked if we could talk in person. I declined. That boundary mattered more than comfort. When people have already outsourced intimacy, conversation becomes performance. One evening, she mentioned feeling alone in the house. Said everything felt hollow without the noise. I believed her. Silence isn't punishment. It's exposure. I went back once, briefly, to collect the last of my things. The place looked smaller. Emptier. Hulu still logged out. The couch where we'd sat in parallel silence felt like a relic. She wasn't there. That was intentional. Clean exits don't overlap. On the way out, I ate alone again. Same sandwich, same table, watching strangers scroll and swipe through other lives. Subway tastes the same no matter where you eat it. That consistency mattered. Later that night, she sent one final message. Not accusatory, just tired. She said she didn't think it would end like this. People rarely do. I archived it without reply, because by then, the story was finished. Not with a fight, not with a winner, just with access revoked and a future that no longer required my attention to survive. Time didn't heal anything. It clarified it. Weeks passed without friction. No emergencies. No emotional spikes. Just days stacking neatly on top of each other. That's how you know a system is stable. When it doesn't require constant attention to keep from collapsing. I settled into a smaller place closer to work. Clean lines. No shared history embedded in the walls. The first morning there, I drove the same route, stopped for coffee out of habit, sat alone, and watched the city wake up. Duncan felt the same. It always does. Some things don't change because they don't need to. She tried once more, later than I expected. Not with nostalgia this time, but with resignation. She said she finally understood what I'd done. That I hadn't disappeared out of spite. That I'd simply closed the door after realizing she'd already walked through another one. I didn't respond. Understanding doesn't require acknowledgement when it comes this late. Work absorbed the rest. Focus has a way of filling space that emotion used to occupy. I built, audited, reinforced. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd secured everything except the one system I'd assumed didn't need monitoring. Occasionally, I'd think about the early days. Before metrics. Before notifications replaced conversations. Before silence became a tool instead of a warning. But memory doesn't pull the way it used to. Once access is revoked long enough, even the archive loses relevance. I heard through someone else that she'd sold most of the remaining furniture. Facebook Marketplace again. Clean exits leave behind objects that no longer mean anything. People always think selling things will make them lighter. Sometimes it just confirms what's already gone. One evening, I turned on a show out of habit, realized I wasn't logged into anything, and turned it off again. No need for background noise anymore. Quiet had stopped being uncomfortable. It had become precise. I never confronted her. Never explained the mechanics of what I'd done. That explanation would have been for her comfort, not my clarity. She chose distance to apply pressure. I chose distance to end dependency. That's the difference. Some men leave loudly. They demand to be remembered. Others just shut systems down, step out of the frame, and let the silence do what it always does in the end. Reveal who was never ready to stand alone. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.